A couple of years ago, Henrik Knieberg drew this picture and started using it in various presentations about agile and lean development. Since then, the drawing has gone viral. It shows up all over the place in articles and presentations and even in a book by Jeff Patton called User Story Mapping. Many people say that the drawing really captures the essence of iterative and incremental development, lean startup, and MVP thinking. However, some misinterpret it, which is quite natural when you take a picture out of its original context. Some criticize it for oversimplifying things, which is true. The picture is, however, a metaphor. It is not about actual car development. It is about product development in general, using a car as a metaphor. Anyway, with all this buzz, Henrik figured it was time to explain the thinking behind it. So here is an extract from Henrik's blog. First example, not like this. The top row illustrates a common misconception about iterative incremental product development, also known as agile. Many projects fail badly because they do big bang delivery. They build the thing until it's 100% done and deliver it right at the very end. I've lost count of the number of failed projects I've seen because of this. However, when agile is presented as an alternative, people sometimes balk at the idea of delivering an unfinished product. I mean, who wants half a car? Imagine this. Here, sir, here's our first iteration, a front tire. What do you think? Customer will be like, why the heck are you delivering a tire to me? I ordered a car. What am I supposed to do with this? By the way, I'm using the term customer here as a generic term to represent people like product managers, product owners, and even early adopter users. With each delivery, the product gets closer to done, but the customer is still angry because he can't actually use the product. It's still just a partial car. And finally, when the product is done, the customer is like, thanks, finally. Why didn't you just deliver this to me in the first place and skip all the other useless deliveries? In this example, he's happy with the final product because it's exactly what he ordered. In reality, that's usually not true. A lot of time has passed without any actual user testing, so the product is most likely riddled with design flaws and based on incorrect assumptions about what people need. So that smiley face at the end is pretty idealistic. Anyway, the first row represents bastardized agile. Technically, it might be incremental and iterative, but the absence of an actual feedback loop makes it very risky and definitely not agile. Hence, the not like this heading. Second example, like this. Now for the second row. Here we take a very different approach. We start with the same context. The customer ordered a car, but this time we don't just build a car. Instead, we focus on the underlying need the customer wants fulfilled. Turns out that his underlying need is, I need to get from A to B faster, and the car is just one possible solution to that. Remember, the car is just a metaphor. Think of any kind of customized product development scenario. So the team delivers the smallest thing that they can think of that will get the customer testing things and giving feedback. Some might call it an MVP, or a minimum viable product, but I prefer to call it the earliest testable product. You can call it whatever you like. In fact, some people even like to call their first release the skateboard version, and that's based on this metaphor. The customer is unlikely to be happy with this. It's nowhere near the car that he ordered. But that's okay. Here's the kicker. We're not trying to make the customer happy at this point. We might make a few early adopters happy, but our main goal at this point is just to learn. Ideally, the team explains this clearly to the customer in advance so that he isn't too disappointed. However, as opposed to the front wheel in the first scenario, the skateboard is actually a usable product that helps the customer get from A to B. Not great, but a tiny bit better than nothing. So we tell the customer, don't worry, the project isn't finished. This is just the first of many iterations. and we're still aiming to build a car. But in the meantime, please try this and give us as much feedback as possible. Think big, but deliver in small, functionally viable increments. We might learn some really surprising things. Suppose the customer says he hates the skateboard. We ask, why? And he says, I hate the color. We're like, the color? That's all? And the customer says, yeah, make it blue. Other than that, it's fine. So you've just saved a lot of money not building a car. Not likely, but who knows? The key question is, what is the cheapest and fastest way we can start learning? Can we deliver something even earlier than a skateboard? How about a bus ticket? Will this help solve the customer's problem? Maybe, maybe not. But we'll definitely learn something by putting this into the hands of real users. Lean Startup offers a great model based on listing your actual hypotheses about these users and then working systematically to validate or invalidate them. You don't need to test the product on all users, and you don't need to build a product to actually test something. Testing a prototype on even a single user will teach you more than nothing. But okay, back to the skateboard example. After playing around with it in the office, the customer says, okay, this is kind of fun, and it does get me to the coffee machine faster, but it's unstable, and I fall off too easily. So the next iteration, we try to solve that problem, or at least learn more about it. The customer can now get around the office without falling off. Happy? Not really. He still wants that car. But in the meantime, he's actually using this product and giving us even more feedback. His biggest complaint is that it's hard to travel longer distances, like between buildings, due to the small wheels and lack of brakes. So next release, the product morphs into something more like a bicycle. Now, the customer can zoom around campus. Yeehaw! We learn some things along the way. The customer likes the feeling of fresh air on his face. The customer is on a campus, and transportation is mostly about getting around between buildings. The bicycle may turn out to be a much better product than the car that was originally envisioned. In fact, while testing out this product, we may learn that the paths are too narrow for a car anyway. We just saved the customer tons of time and money and gave him a better product in less time. Now you may be thinking, but shouldn't we already have known that via the upfront analysis of the customer's context and needs? Good point. But in most real-life product development scenarios I've seen, no matter how much upfront analysis you do, you're still surprised when you put the first real release into the hands of real users, and many of your assumptions turn out to be way off. So yes, do some upfront analysis, discover as much as you can before starting development, but don't spend too much time on it, and don't trust the analysis too much. Start prototyping and releasing instead. That's when the real learning happens. Anyway, back to the story. Perhaps the customer wants more. Sometimes he needs to travel to another city, and the bike ride is too slow and a bit sweaty. So next iteration, we add an engine. This model is especially suitable for software, since software is, well, soft. You can morph the product as you go, as opposed to hardware, where you essentially have to rebuild every time. However, even in hardware projects, there is a huge benefit to delivering prototypes to observe and learn from how your customer uses your product. It's just that the iterations tend to be a bit longer. Even actual car companies like Tesla and Toyota do a lot of prototyping before developing a new car model. So what now? Again, maybe the customer is happy with the motorcycle. We could end the project earlier than planned. Most products are riddled with complexity and features that nobody uses. The iterative approach is really a way of delivering less or finding the simplest and cheapest way to solve the customer's problem. Minimize the distance to awesome. Very zen. Or again, the customer could choose to continue without modifications. We may, in fact, end up with the exact same car as originally envisioned. However, it is much more likely that we gain vital insights along the way and end up with something slightly different, like this. The customer is overjoyed. Why? Because we learned along the way and he appreciates fresh air in his face. So we ended up with a convertible. He did get a car after all, but a better car than originally planned. So let's take a step back. What's your skateboard? The top scenario, delivering a front tire, sucks because we keep delivering stuff that the customer can't use at all. If you know what you're doing, your product has very little complexity and risk, perhaps you've built the thing 100 times before, then go ahead and just do a big bang. Build the thing and deliver it when it's done. However, most product development efforts I've seen are much too complex and risky for that. And the big bang approach all too often leads to huge, expensive failures. So the key question is, what's your skateboard? In product development, one of the first things you should do after describing the problem you are trying to solve and whom you're trying to solve it for is to identify your skateboard equivalent. Think of the skateboard as a metaphor for the smallest thing you can put in the hands of real users and get real feedback. Or use bus ticket if that metaphor works better for you. This will give you the vitally needed feedback loop and will give both you and your customer control over the project. You can learn and make changes instead of just following the plan and hoping for the best.